Lucci and Ben. Today, we are talking about how to prevent quiet quitting in your relationships. Now, we have a recent video about quiet quitting. You can check that out. But today, we're focusing on what it means to re-engage people in your life, but mostly at work. But everything we talk about today, you can absolutely apply to every other relationship in your life. It could be your plants, it could be your animals, it could be your partner. Whoever it is, whatever it is, you can absolutely use what we're talking about today, but we are going to focus on work today, or whatever you consider work. So I'm going to throw it over to you guys. I want to know, how have you re-engaged where you're at with your teams, with anyone that you work with? If you see like people are starting to quiet quit, or you're seeing people starting to disengage or just become less active, what do you do? Like, how do you re-engage people and make them feel like, hey, you're important. We want to hear from you. We want to see what you're up to.
This is a this is kind of what we've been doing for years. Before quiet quitting was spoken about, I think a lot of people, the pandemic certainly shone a light on how people were feeling about being at work. But in a general sense, the way we've always gotten the bulk of the whatever you want to call it, right? The boost in throughput, the boost in efficiency. It generally comes from engaging people. There's a lot that you get out of bringing visibility to the process and bringing measurability and helping people to understand the impact of what they're doing. But at the end of the day, it's been that cultural transformation where we're reaching out individual by individual, making sure that they're okay, making sure that they feel heard and acknowledged, and that they feel like they have control over the process that's unfolding as we help them into whatever framework we're helping them adopt.
Yeah, and I think I like that you focused on reaching out to individuals. I think you don't even, if you're not a one-on-one kind of person, you could also do it in a team setting. Like I had an interesting uh a conversation with someone recently who asked me to run their stand-ups for the week that they were out. And the way I run a stand-up, usually like every now and then I check in with the team and I say, just a reminder, this is what the stand-up is for. This is the goal of the stand-up. This is, we're here to talk about what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, and are we blocked? And I could feel like an energy shift, like people remembered why we were on that call. And I do think even though we know it, we've already been doing it for, like, you could say you've been doing stand-ups for years, but to be reminded to re-engage people with what's the purpose of this meeting does change the energy. And when I had a conversation with the person who was out and I just talked about how things went, they said how they felt like they were afraid to do that, or afraid to remind people why they were on a call, or remind people of the purpose. They didn't want to be like too pesky or too like too annoying about it. And I said, well, I think people really like that reassurance of why they're on a call. They like that check-in because it like re-engages them for the content of the meeting. And they were like, oh, I never saw it that way. And I think just trying to understand how do we reach people in different ways? That's just one way, is just like, hey, let's revisit this thing that we do every day, but maybe we forget why.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna like be a bit more existential here, right? So the idea that quiet quitting is like this slow and unobvious withdrawal, and that's the quiet part of it. It's like, it's happening without acknowledgement, and really the only way that can occur is if you're not engaging people. So if people are allowed to go unengaged for a long protracted period of time, quiet quitting, it could be quiet, whatever, it could be, I don't know, a whole bunch of quiet behaviors. But just by virtue of the fact you don't allow those people to go for protracted periods of times where they're not engaged, is going to solve the quiet element of quiet quitting. They might still be unhappy, they might still not like their job, but at least it's going to be obvious. We're not talking about why do people quit, we're talking about why do people feel like they can just disappear into the background. And I think it's as simple as engagement. If people are engaged, are checking in with people at a personal level on a continuous basis, that's got to be solving the quiet element of quiet quitting.
Yes, and I think, Ben, also if you show that you care no, that you care about the other person. And if you observe something like your first question or the question that you asked at the beginning, Alana, if you see somebody that's behaving in a different way, less engaged, then you can have a conversation and you can start by saying, I am observing this. I would like to check with you if am I correct? Um, and once you set that tone and once you open up to say, is there something happening to you? And see, maybe this I don't have clarity about my tasks or why am I doing what I am I doing. And that gives you clarity. Okay, let's go back to basics. Let's remember always our purpose, our direction, our goals, and why. And maybe it's something more personal, and at the same time, you can find other ways um, to help that person come back and engage and feel more comfortable. I think, like, yes, observing and being there for them and show them that you care.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love all of this in theory sounds great. Of course, like I care about you, talk to me. What can I do to get you more engaged? But like, what does that look like in real life? Like, I really love to know, like, give me an example of what we've all done on the call just to get people engaged again, to just remind people that we're there. Like, what are some things people can actually do to re-engage a person or a team that they feel like is just kind of quietly quitting, or just, not as engaged as they used to be?
People seem to think that when you walk into a work building, the rules that apply in the rest of the world stop applying. When you walk out of a meeting and people will say, well, we're never going to make that commitment. It's like, you wouldn't do that in real life. And it's the same thing with relationships. Relationships at work are identical to relationships in your normal life. If you're not checking in with people, if you're not showing them that you care, if there isn't an exchange of energy where they're getting some of their needs met and you're getting some of your needs met, then you'll drift. And that person, whether we're talking about a friendship or a more intimate partner, the relationship will start to suffer and it'll eventually end. The main difference here being is that there's the added monetary compensation aspect of it, where a person's livelihood is dependent upon the thing. So where you might be all right, leaving a different kind of a relationship, you're at work here. And so there will be this idea of, well, as long as I keep showing up, I'll keep getting a paycheck. And that's not good for anybody.
To be very specific, okay, so what would that look like? What would engaging people look like? So quite often you might have meetings where you've got a group of people. Some are more comfortable or stronger speaking in front of a group. Some are less comfortable. As a coach, as a facilitator, you need to use your judgment about soliciting opinion from those people. So you could ask that person directly, I haven't heard much from you. Do you want to contribute to the conversation? Again, you need to be careful with that, because also you don't want to push someone outside of their comfort zone too far that they kind of retreat even further. So be careful in that perspective, but also then open up other lines of communication. So I notice a few of you haven't spoken in this conversation. If any of you want to talk to me one-to-one after this conversation, I'm available, whether that's on email or Slack or just a good old telephone call. Like, I can make myself available, like opening avenues of communication that suit the person you're trying to target, rather than assuming that one avenue or one arena will suit everyone the same. And that's not the case. We know that.
Yes. And to make a pause, let's stop. No, sometimes it's more important to just, okay, let's not have I don't know if you're going, let's not have the session that we are going to have. Let's agree we are going to be conscious that we are going to do something else this time. And let's pause. Let's stop for a while. Let's think, self-reflect upon what's happening in my mind, what's happening to me with the others. And sometimes that pause is just like what you need to restart again, from another place.
Yeah. I love that. I think, everywhere, right? In all relationships, it's wise to just reflect every now and then. And Leah, to your point earlier, you were just talking about how, like, a lot of the, like, rules at work all of a sudden seem to go away because, you leave a meeting and you might say, oh, those deadlines, we're never going to make them. And no one says anything. No one's transparent about it. Or like some people are afraid to speak up or ask questions because they don't feel safe to be vulnerable. And I think when we start feeling more open, we start feeling more accountable to each other. When we are honest about, hey, you know what, actually, we can't make that deadline. This is why. We start having those real conversations that make us have just a more meaningful interaction with people. And I think when we start building that trust and that ability to be transparent and vulnerable with each other, then the conversations are different and we feel like we're not just part of the process, but we're supporting the process together. And I think when I've seen teams do the best together, it's been the ones who are the most honest, the most open, and they feel accountable not just to the work that they're doing, but to the work of the others on their team. And I feel like that's a huge thing about keeping people engaged, is having people who feel like the relationships they have with their work and their team members are equally important to them. And I think that's where I've seen the most success with teams.
We're with these people the majority of our lives. We might as well enjoy the experience.
People forget that. I've opened up like retros with like icebreakers of what'd you do this weekend that has, I don't even say that doesn't have to do with work. Like just, oh, what was everyone up to this weekend? Or what like was your favorite thing that happened this week? And people get really awkward at first and there's a lot of silence and someone will be like with work. Well, I was like, no, I don't want to hear about work for the 2 minutes of this meeting. I don't want to hear I just want to hear about what's going on with you. Like what makes you happy? It can't always be work. And I think people are pleasantly surprised by that because they expect, oh, if we're at work, we're only talking about work. It's work, work, work. Like no one needs to know about my hobbies or my kids or my whatever it is that like lights you up after whenever you leave. And I think switching that like allows people to bring their joy into work with them. And then they feel like a lot happier because it doesn't have to be this totally separate thing. And I think that just reminded me of a topic of what does it mean to bring your whole self to work? And I think there's something there about that, like bringing your joy to work and bringing yourself to work. And what does that do for the people around you? And how does that impact your environment? And will others see that and also bring themselves to work?
Sounds like
it
could be another whole topic or another whole video.
Part 4 coming at you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is all the time we have for today. And I just have to say, I hope you all realize, and if you don't, you're going to, our new backgrounds are amazing. And if you've been watching us for a little while, you'll notice a difference. And if you're joining for the first time, you're welcome. This is the inaugural background amazingness from Integral Agile. And Libor, thank you. Hats off to you. He is our resident design artist. And yeah, just totally in love with our new background. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Please let us know in the comments below about what is like where you're at with work. How do you keep people engaged? Do you have any techniques that we could use? Please let us know. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below and subscribe to our channel for more videos. We'll see you next time.